afternoon to everybody and welcome yet again to our webinar today. I'm Jessica Caruso and I am the Corporate Relations Specialist here at IFZA, one of the most truly dynamic free zones in the UAE. Today we'll be presenting a guide to company formation in the UAE, including the latest tax developments. This is going to be in collaboration with the Swiss Business Council. We have three special guests with us today. We have Berna Ademir, Urs Sturnemann, and Michael Lane, who'll be presenting. These presentations are going to be followed by a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So if you do have any questions, please make sure you write them in the question box so I can address them during our Q&A session. Without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our first speaker, Urs Sturnemann. He is the Vice President of the Swiss Business Council and the Chairman of the Swiss Academy, with over 25 years experience here in the Middle East. Today, he's going to be answering the question, why Dubai?
Thank you, Jessica. That's very kind of you to have invited me for the IFZA webinar. And for us from the Swiss Business Council, you see we have many of our members participating, and we have the chance to inform them why Dubai, especially for those ones who are in Switzerland. There are quite a few. And definitely for me, who is here now since 24 years, the main thing is it was never boring. Every day they're adapting to changes. We had so many changes, important developments worldwide, like Corona, new technologies coming, Abraham Accord, and always the UAE quickly adapted to it and made out of a disadvantage an advantage for the country. That also is shown through the political changes which were taken in the world, and they took a neutral position and have become home office for employees from all over the world, many from Switzerland, who are having now their office work out of Dubai. Why Dubai? Dubai is a real hub. It is a hub. Within 3-4 hours flight, we will reach a region of 3 billion people. This, of course, is a great chance, especially for Swiss companies, where we are in a small, tiny country with about 8 to 9 million people. The business opportunities, they are great. There are many international companies. They moved their headquarters to Dubai in all kinds of fields, especially also now in the commodity field, because they see the advantages, and it's easy to move here. Why is it easy? Well, the language is the international English, and that makes it easy to communicate with everybody. Also in IFZA, when you apply for anything here, everything is in English. Up to now, it was said, well, there's no taxes, that's a big advantage, but now a 9% corporate tax is coming, which we will be informed quite later on by Michael. Population, that is an impressive number. Currently, about 90% of the population are foreigners. Only 10% are locals. We in Switzerland, where we have 25% foreigners, we already say, oh, that's too much, oh, that's too much. But here it works very harmful. Everybody is happy, and it works great and attracts even more people. And especially also for new industries in fintech, blockchain, crypto technologies, they are attracted because the UAE tried to be a leader in all these fields. And the opportunities are for large and small. Of course, multinationals are here for many years already, and they see the synergies, but also small and medium enterprise companies, they're moving here because they see the advantages. It's quickly and easy to establish. International delegations are coming to study the model of Dubai, and they try to copy it. This is also somehow reflected in the top ratings, in the ratings worldwide. There are so many ratings, countries are in it, and Dubai is in 432 global indicators in the top 10. So they're leading in many things, in environment, climate change, security, safety, cybersecurity, and so on. So definitely a great opportunity for all of us. Tax situation, as I briefly mentioned before, there's a small corporate tax coming, 9%, which is still quite below that of other countries, so definitely still an advantage. Quite important and quite interesting. UAE, a country which up to now didn't really have tax, has tax treaties with 130 countries, and those tax treaties can very often be very beneficial. Important also is to know that in the UAE is the Sharia law applying, but with UAE foundations you can avoid it. This therefore is very good for Muslims, non-Muslims, and very good to own real estate with it. An important thing is the economic substance. Worldwide, countries say companies need to have substance in the form of office, employees, and that the management lives there. Especially this is quite tough for countries in the Caribbean, where I lived, like me in the BVI for 5 years, where they have 500,000 companies. Quite a few of them think, hey, why don't we move? Why don't we move to a country like the UAE, where they are welcome, where they can have real offices, they can have as many employees as they want, and the management also will like it here because there is no personal income tax. So definitely plenty of advantages. And the infrastructure here, everybody can see it. This is the highest standard you can have. The facilities, the connectivity is just outstanding. Quality of life is good, and well, political stability is shown, especially during these tough times, is very stable. Company migration, as I mentioned before, when you migrate company, the main good advantage is bank accounts remain, so you don't have to go through the headache of opening new bank accounts, and the contracts remain the same. That's also a very important thing. The excellent infrastructure we see in those different zones we have, tax we already mentioned, and important also for international business, you need to have financial centers. The IFZA has one, ADGM, private school. We have more than 200 private schools and excellent airlines who can bring you here. So company migration is possible not only from abroad to the country itself, but also from other Emirates. You can move easily to IFZA, and IFZA is a leader in attracting companies, especially also in the crypto, blockchain, metaverse, NFT, Web3, or whatever, all these new things are coming. They're open for new technologies, they attract them, and they're very comfortable here. So plenty of relevant events in all these fields here. Dubai Metaverse strategy, they will be in the top 10 worldwide. Israel, just briefly to mention, they have a very good accord with it. Many companies from Israel are moving here, and they use plenty of UAE companies. So when you think of all these advantages, why Dubai, which is offering, then you need to have a good provider. With whom do you want to cooperate? There are so many free zones here, but my experience of 24 years here, definitely IFZA, the International Free Zone Authority, is a leading entity and under European management, which helps a lot, especially for you Europeans, to come here, because you know you are in good hands, and they can help you. So definitely all great opportunities for investors to come here in a great area. And with this, I would like to hand over and give it back to Jessica.
Thank you so much, Urs, for your detailed and insightful presentation into the reasons, particularly as to why Dubai, and for its incredible popularity, of course. Very interesting. So I'd like to now introduce our second speaker for today, who is Michael Lane. He is a Swiss lawyer and is the managing director of Swiss Group Legal. He's got extensive experience operating both legal sectors in the UAE, but also in Switzerland. So with all of his experience, he's going to be explaining to us the latest tax developments in the UAE.
Jessica, thank you very much for your kind introduction. Coming to the main topic of this webinar, it's about the general guide about company formation here in the United Arab Emirates. And as Jessica introduced, the latest tax developments also focusing here on the United Arab Emirates. So what do I want to talk about? A brief overview on doing business here in the Emirates, the global standards, the new normal we all face, compliance and tax matters when we talk about company setup and operating here in the UAE, Dubai, Quo Vadis. So what's next here? What's the vision here of the Emirate? And then at the end of the whole webinar, then the Q&A session. So as a lawyer, first a few words to the legal framework here in the Emirates. So the Emirates as a country, they're both based on the civil code. So that's not so different from the civil code we know from Switzerland. because Napoleon also came here to Egypt, and this, of course, influenced the Emirates. This here, being an Arab Muslim country, is, of course, under the public order, public policy of the Sharia law principle. This has mostly an impact on personal status law. This is when we think about when you actually live here. It's about divorce, it's about getting married here, and it's when you have assets here in the Emirates. It's also about inheritance, which follow here, until now, the Sharia law principles. So currently, it doesn't really depend on your background, religious background. If you have assets here in the UAE and you don't take the precautions, they would follow the Sharia law inheritance principles. Then we have the two islands here in the Emirates. This is on one side the IFZA, the Dubai International Finance Center, the financial center here in Dubai, and the equivalent in Abu Dhabi, the Abu Dhabi Global Market. These two financial free zones, they have their own courts and their own sets of law. They're both governed by common law, so England and Wales, so similar of what's happening in Singapore, New York, and London. When we talk about the company setup here in the Emirates, from a general point of view, it mostly depends on where you want to do business. If you want to do business within the UAE, you need to open a mainland, a local company. That means in one of the 7 Emirates outside of the free zones. If you want to set up here in the Emirates and you do business outside the UAE, then you can set up a free zone company onshore here on one point, which includes IFZA and the financial free zones, the IFC and ADGM. Currently, the UAE has about 45 different free zones. They range from very industry-specific free zones, such as Healthcare City with international hospitals, to Media City, where all the international conglomerates have set up, to more generic or general free zones, such as IFZA. Then as a third option, you can also set up a free zone company offshore. This is basically the same principle as Urs mentioned before, as we know from the BVI or Cayman or other offshore, traditional offshore jurisdiction. The main point is that if you set up a mainland company, then you deal with the local authorities, the economic departments, which is all in Arabic, compared to free zone setup, where the free zone is run in English and you can also communicate with the free zone in English. Then a few words to the famous local partner requirement here when setting up in the UAE. We all know this has been the case setting up a local company here in the Emirates, that you are obliged to have a 51% local partner, so an Emirati shareholder. This requirement has been lifted in summer last year on a federal level, and it has been delegated to each of the Emirates now to define which business activities still need a 51% local partner and which local setups can be fully owned by a local partner. This is, of course, the case in the free zone, where all the setups can be fully owned by foreigners. When we talk about global standard and the new normal, we have an interconnected world. What's happening here in the UAE might have an impact in Switzerland, in the Americas, in Singapore, and vice versa. So we cannot just look here just on the UAE, how to do business and how to set up, but we need to look at the broader sense, at the broader framework. One point, Urs has already brought it up, is economic substance regulation. This, of course, comes from the BEPS, the international standard, that specific business activities such as holding company or shipping services have been singled out, where you need to show now that you actually have substance behind the company, meaning a proper office setup, meaning employees, meaning appropriate expenses. If you do not fulfill the economic substance requirement, then nowadays under the international framework there will be an automatic exchange of information between the involved jurisdictions. Then we have the next point, tax transparency and exchange of information. This led here to the UBO regulation. Like in other jurisdictions, companies here are obliged to file with the company registrar their UBO register, so who's actually behind those companies. And then last but not least, talking about international best practice and standards, the international set FATF recommendations. We all know that the United Arab Emirates have been put on the grey list by the FATF, placing it under increased monitoring. So this, just as a side note, is not the case because the UAE has no taxes, but it has been put on the grey list because the FATF says here are strategic deficiencies in the anti-money laundering regime here in the country. Being on the grey list for the UAE, that means that the country as such, and everyone doing business here, is obliged to fully implement the 40 recommendation from the FATF. When we look at this, why has the UAE maybe a specific or an elevated risk as a country? I singled out a few points. One, of course, is like because the UAE is a leader in oil, diamond, and gold exports. Of course, this being a high-risk business or business activity. We are located between high-risk countries here in the region. And then, as I stated initially, we have the setup of financial and commercial free zones, which of course is also very specific to the UAE, which is not known in other jurisdictions such as Switzerland. Tax situation here in the UAE, a general overview. From a personal point of view, individual point of view, there are no personal income taxes in the UAE. This also means there is no tax registration or reporting. So this is also, or leads also to the fact that an individual here does not have a TRN number, which might be requested by foreign banks because there's still no reporting or registration obligation here as an individual. There are currently also no inheritance, estate, or gift tax. When we look at the tax situation here in the UAE from a corporate point of view, as Urs also mentioned before, since 2018, the value-added tax has been implemented with a general rate of 5%. Also here, like in other jurisdictions, there of course are zero-rated rates and also exempt business activities. A bit more specific or a bit more special to the UAE is the excise tax, which has been implemented for goods which are considered to be harmful, such as alcohol, tobacco, carbonated drinks, energy drinks, sweetened drinks, electronic smoking devices and tools, as well as liquids which are used in those tools. So here, if you offer those goods, then you are taxed specifically just with this excise tax. Also, point to mention is that there currently is, and even under the corporate tax regime, there will be no withholding taxes here in the UAE. Not on royalties, not on interest or dividends or similar. When we look on the broader point of view, when we talk about double tax treaty, the UAE has concluded 137 double tax treaties as per today. This is a considerable amount of numbers compared to other jurisdictions. When I want to single out the main point under the Swiss-UAE double tax treaty, which is in force for more than 10 years now, this also speaks that this treaty is very much implemented between the authorities and so far has not raised, as far as I can tell from my experience, any issues. The most important point is here, considering that Switzerland has a 35% withholding tax, that if you have a corporate shareholder here in the UAE who has at least 10% of the voting rights in the Swiss company, the 35% withholding tax can effectively be reduced to 5% only. For all other cases, also when you have an individual who is claiming benefits on the double tax treaty, this can be reduced from 35 to 15%. Royalties and interest are subject to zero-rate tax. It's an open secret now. The UAE has or will introduce the UAE corporate tax regime. This is also the case to reaffirm the UAE's commitment to meeting international standards. Taxes, of course, having a bit the dual purpose. On one side, to generate income for a country who wants to separate just from the oil business only. But on the other hand, it's also from a lawyer, from a compliance point of view, for the first time, the companies here in this country will be forced to report to the government on what they're doing. So, of course, this also, when we look at the AML requirements and new setups, this will help the UAE also to get off the grey list. This tax regime will become effective for the company's financial years starting on or after June 1st of 2023, which means that for most of the companies here in the UAE, it will only kick in on January 1st, 2024. The scope, the UAE corporate tax will apply to all UAE business and commercial activities, so there's no distinction if it is a mainland or a free zone company. Everyone needs to file the related audit reports and numbers. If you then need to actually pay tax, this then is a separate topic. When we look at the rates, so far we know there is a zero rate tax for a tax bracket up to roughly $100,000 taxable income. Anything above this $100,000 will be taxed at 9%. Again, in order to meet international standards, there will be a different tax rate for the large multinationals under the Pillar 2. Of course, the big question is, how will free zone companies be handled under the UAE corporate tax regime? As I stated before, any company will need to file the financials, and then it depends on what the company does for business. Roughly, if you play by the rules and you only do business outside the UAE, you most likely be tax exempt. While if you do business in the UAE, then you should not have a preferred status compared to a mainland company. Then you will at least partially be taxed at this 0 or then 9% if above the $100,000 threshold. Dubai, Quo Vadis, so what's next? I said it initially, the laws here are under the umbrella of the Sharia law on a federal level now, so not just the UAE, but the whole, not just on Dubai level, but the whole UAE level. There will be a new personal status law implemented as of February 1st, which allows non-Muslims now to get married here in the UAE. It allows non-Muslims to have the divorce procedures more in line with their background. It allows also non-Muslims already to register will when they get married. So it eases up and makes the country more attractive to foreign investors to take a bit away of the fear of Sharia law, which is around. What's next in Dubai? So just for the Emirate of Dubai, Dubai Metaverse Strategy, I always brought it up before. This is about that Dubai wants to be in the top 10 jurisdiction when we talk about the Metaverse community. Smart Dubai 2021 strategies. Dubai wants to be a smart, resilient city. This is from autonomous vehicles on the roads of Dubai up to how you engage with the government. The end goal is basically that you should be able to do everything remote and online when you interact with the government. So there should be in the future no need anymore to actually go to a government office. Then just recently announced, beginning of January, the Dubai Economic Agenda D33. So this is the outlook for the next 10 years. Dubai wants to basically double its foreign trade in the next decade to 26 trillion dirhams. They want to have increased the foreign direct investments per year to 60 billion dirhams in the next 10 years. They really want to bring in the foreign investments. They also want to bring more Emiratis, more local people into the private sector industry. They want to open Dubai Sandbox, which should allow big companies to try their investments in their new technologies in order to assess if this is ready for then the big go live. Of course, IFZA, being a Dubai free zone, they jump on this train. They want to be part of all these strategies. And as we already said, they started with like this smart implementation that you can do remote company setup. So IFZA, being part here, of course, of the Dubai government, is jumping on that train to play its part in the Dubai next development in the next 10 years. So with this, I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to hand back to Jessica.
A big thank you to Michael for this valuable information on the new corporate tax which may affect businesses here in the UAE. If you do have questions, I would really like to remind you that we will be having a Q&A session after our last and final presentation. So don't forget to write down the questions in the question box so that I can have a look at them after the next presentation, which will be presented by Berna, who is a client engagement manager here at IFZA. As a Swiss national, she offers the highest level of customer service in French, German, and also English. And she is here to discuss with you company formation with IFZA. Over to you, Berna.
Thank you, Jessica, for the lovely introduction. So what is IFZA? IFZA is the International Free Zone Authority based here in Dubai Silicon Oasis. IFZA exists to attract innovators and entrepreneurs to come to Dubai and to contribute to Dubai's economic prosperity. We are also here to serve the wider community of the United Arab Emirates by assisting these clients to set up their companies here in Dubai with us. What makes IFZA so special? IFZA is an internationally oriented free zone here in Dubai and one of its kind, a B2B free zone. Being a B2B free zone means that we have a vast network of business partners. These business partners, professional partners, how we call them, are trained by our in-house academy. With this information and the guidance, they are here to consult our end clients for their company setup here with us at IFZA. During the process, they also help to develop the business-friendly environment. We at IFZA are here to present ourselves in the direction of excellent customer service, competence, and flexibility. The location of IFZA here in Dubai Silicon Oasis is at our business park. Why is this place an ideal place for our entrepreneurs? Well, it is strategically placed here in Dubai, which actually gives you the possibility to go to downtown in 15 minutes. For our viewers who are not from Dubai or the UAE, this is where Burj Khalifa is, and around 20 minutes from Dubai International Airport. With this location, it is ideal, especially for our new companies, to set themselves up here and to benefit for the access to worldwide services. IFZA was founded in 2017, and it continues itself as one of the most successful free zones here in Dubai. What are the benefits of IFZA? As mentioned, we have a vast network of our world-class authorized partners, which include specifically law firms, accounting firms, and corporate service providers, and similar across all different continents and countries. We offer a safe and business-friendly legal framework for our businesses and entrepreneurs who would like to set themselves up here. We have a fast, efficient, and affordable company incorporation process. Our expert multinational team can advise you on the perfect fit for you, also advise you in the different languages that we offer. Our business licenses are available for the incorporation of new companies or also for branches. With IFZA, you can combine professional, commercial, also industrial activities under one IFZA license without having to have different licenses for each kind of activity. How do you differentiate those? So the professional activities are more consultancy and similar activities, where commercial are more based on trading, import, export, storage, and distribution. The physical presence of our entrepreneurs and business owners is not required during the company's setup procedure, which makes it easier for you to do everything online from wherever you are in the world. We also give you a full flexibility on the up and down scaling of your company. Our state-of-art and flexible office solutions are here for you, as mentioned in the business park, which means that you can have options from FlexiDesk up to your own office with walls. Finally, last but not least, we also offer you a unique ecosystem which supports our new incorporate companies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Berna, who has given us a fantastic overview of how IFZA operates and how you can be involved with IFZA. So that's all we have for our presentations today. I'm going to move on to our question and answer session. So make sure you send your questions in to the question box so I can take those now. Okay, so our first question here is, I believe we could ask Urs. So which banks would you refer in order to open a company account?
Well, thank you for this question, which I've heard many, many, many times. And usually I can't just say, well, that's the one. I have been a banker for 15 years, so I abstain from that. But what I definitely can recommend, worldwide, opening bank accounts is not that easy anymore as it was in the last century. It takes a while. It can take a few weeks, a few months, perhaps even. Therefore, it's recommended perhaps to open with 1 or 2 or 3 banks at the same time. And what is very good, of course, is to know that when you establish a company, do it in a free zone, which has also good relations with banks. And here it's very good that IFZA has a special department with people who have good connections with banks. So that is very important. They don't just connect to somebody they haven't ever even known before. And something very important as well, and which I have experienced myself, which I've done myself, is there's now VIO Bank, a digital bank, a subsidiary from a main bank in Abu Dhabi. And there it is possible, you won't believe it, but it is possible to open bank accounts within 3 to 5 days. So you just have to submit all the documents, upload them, and then afterwards, within those days, you are able to have a bank account. Up to now, these bank accounts were in the local currency, which is dirham. But very good news, just last week, it has now been opened also for US dollar. So easy to make worldwide transfers through this bank. So I think this answers somehow that question.
Thank you so much for your detailed response. I'm going over to the next question here, which I believe is most appropriate for Berna. What documents would we need to set up a company with IFZA?
So this question has actually 2 parts. The first one will be individual shareholders. It's more simple. We require the copy passports of the shareholders, and we need the completed IFZA form, which is usually done through our business partners. So they will assist you. They can do the work for you. So just contact one of our business partners. For the corporate shareholders, it requires a more detailed answer, which we can assist you upon request.
Thank you so much for letting us know. I've got another question here. I believe this would be for Michael to answer. Possibly Berna. Will the free zone companies be subject to corporate income tax? Which ones would be exempt, if not?
So maybe I can say a few words. As I said it a bit in the presentation, all companies set up in the UAE, mainland or free zone, will be obliged to register with the tax authorities and also submit the financials. Then again, now the tax laws have been published, but we're waiting for the implementing regulation, which then go a bit deeper into the matter, as the tax law basically has some exemptions which still need to be defined. As a principle, all companies are subject to corporate income tax. So if you're in IFZA or in DMCC or in the mainland, you are subject to corporate tax, but then if you actually have to pay taxes, that will be a different topic once the implementing regulation, the ministerial decision, is published. We know more on that.
Wonderful.
Do you want to make some comments or add on?
I would say you summarized it perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you so much for answering that question for our viewers. Another one also for you, Michael. Will there be individual income tax after the introduction of the corporate tax, do you believe?
No, there is no such thing as individual income tax on any sort of radar or horizon here from the UAE point of view. Of course, no one can say what's happening in 10, 15 years, but for now, there's nothing on the radar about individual income tax.
Well, that is very good news then. Let's take another question here. how long does this process take to set up a company at IFZA? Berna, if you could please answer that one for us.
Of course, with pleasure. So it depends. Once we have the completed documentation with us, and once we receive the full payment, it will take around 3 to 5 business days. This is the usual time frame we give.
Okay, that's not too bad at all, I suppose. Thank you very much for letting us know. Another question here, it says, does the UAE have a real estate tax? Michael, are you familiar with this one?
I mean, whenever you do a transfer of real estate, there is a 5% fee to pay, normal fee, and then is a discounted 4%, sorry, 4%, the VAT tax is 5, of course, 4% fee to the Dubai Land Department or the other land departments. There is basically a reduced fee of 0.1 to 5% if it's a gifting to a close relative within the family, as an example, or a transfer to the father, the son, whatever. But the principal rate is 4% of basically the purchase amount on the title deed.
I see. Okay, then. We are having lots of questions coming in now. I've got one for Urs here. Is it necessary to have any knowledge, Arabic knowledge, in order to conduct business or do any business here in the UAE?
Well, here I have some good news, which is no. I came here in 2004, and I have to say, unfortunately, at that time, my Arabic language was better than now. These days, you cannot use it. If you go to somebody and say, Salam alaikum, kif halak, and so they say, you speak very good Arabic. I think very good, but they say it in English. And that's the problem also when I look around. Well, how many speak Arabic here? I see them from all over the world, but not really from here. But nevertheless, I recommend everybody to take an Arabic course so that you get a little bit an understanding of it, that you can start a little bit to communicate. And what I see, also those few words I say, usually it's helpful for business. They say, you know, Urs, he is speaking a bit of Arabic, and this gives quite a good feeling. And also for me, as an old white man, it makes me, of course, kind of younger.
Well, you are as young as you feel, as they say, and Arabic is definitely on my list of things to do. However, I do have another question. You mentioned about crypto and blockchain field, considering there's a lot of hype about that at the moment. Do you know if how somebody should really approach that, since Dubai is really taking the lead on these fields?
Yeah, so what we have seen, Dubai tries to be at the forefront of so many developments. Crypto, blockchain is definitely one of them. Switzerland is also one of them. They are perhaps a few steps ahead because they started before, especially the Crypto Valley. The good thing is now that many companies from Crypto Valley in Zurich, they moved and opened offices here in the UAE, also here in IFZA. And that is the thing. You need to get to know such people who have a certain understanding, who have gone through the procedure of establishing companies in that field. And there's so many conferences and networking events where you just have to participate. The people usually will not come to you. You have to go out to them. And the interest is definitely very, very high. Many cryptocurrencies have come down in the last few months, year. But nevertheless, the potential is, of course, huge for any blockchain technology. And also the Swiss Business Council has a special group. We have a financial group, and with it as well a blockchain group. So everybody is definitely welcome to participate if you have some Swiss link with the Swiss Business Council in that group.
Super. Thank you very much. I have a question here which has come in, I believe would be helpful if Michael could answer this one. Will sole establishments or proprietorships also be subject to the corporate tax? Another question from the same one there is, are foundations or offshore companies also liable for corporate tax?
So to be honest, offshore and foundations not, but sole proprietorship, I would assume, since you're a company, you might fall under that too, but this is not for granted, so I will need to check on that.
I see. One more follow-up question from there is, are all companies required to submit their tax returns, even if they're not generating income?
Well, then you need to submit a file to say that you're not generating income. I guess it's the same in Switzerland. If you have a company not doing business, you still need to submit the appropriate filing. So yes.
That's a really, really helpful one, actually. Thank you very much for that question and the answer. So I have a question for Berna. What would we need to become a business partner of IFZA?
Yes, of course. So to become a business partner, we actually start off with contacting you, arranging a small meeting to find more about you. What are you doing as activity? Do you have any experience with company setup, especially in Dubai? Experience is not required. If you don't have any, it's not a problem at all. We as client engagement managers and also our academy are here to support you on your road to become a business partner with IFZA. The more administrative part that we need to become a business partner is the copy of your trade license and the passport copy of the general manager. Then we will sign together a partner agreement and you will become a business partner of IFZA.
Wonderful. Very helpful as well. I have another question from one of our participants who has said, could you please tell me a little bit more about the economic substance test? I know it's not really the focus of our session today, but maybe if we could just have a few examples of the consequences of complying or not complying with such a test and some potential criteria, that would be really helpful.
I mean, maybe a few words, maybe Urs, you can then add.
Or perhaps if I start.
Okay, yeah.
Because sometimes people say, what is this economic substance? And well, like so many things, either they come from the US or from Europe. Well, the economic substance came from Europe. There's demand for it. And the whole thing is, because there are so many American companies like Amazon, Microsoft and others, they made billions of profit in the European Union, but paid very little tax or no tax at all because their company was somewhere in the Caribbean, and in the Caribbean, they just handled the company. They didn't have any employees there. And there the European Union said, oh no, they need to have some substance in the form of employees, in the form of offices, in the form of expensive, and the management should be there. And this is the great, great advantage now that in the UAE, you can have as big an office as you want. You can have as many employees as you want. From the tax point of view, it's very reasonable, only 9%. And that, of course, is a great advantage. And with this, I want to give over to you, Michael, to say a little bit the details how that should be handled.
Yeah, maybe one example you pointed out. Let's take, for example, Starbucks. Starbucks made millions of turnover in the UK, and they basically paid no taxes a couple of years ago. Why? Because they have a fancy no or low-cost jurisdiction company set up who owns the IP right to use the cup, to use the logo, to use the restaurant layout, right? So all the UK Starbucks company had to pay to use the IP right, so you move taxable profits out of the UK into a no or low cost jurisdiction. That's why, for example, IP business is one of these 9 activities where you need to show economic substance. And here, for example, economic substance for an IP right, you would need to show who developed this IP right, who is basically further develop it, who is there to handle this IP right, and if this is just a letterbox company on a BVI island or even a letterbox company here in the UAE, that's not enough anymore. Another activity is a holding company, so you need to show that you have a proper office here, that you need to show that the holding company is managed here in order to take out all the nice dividends from other jurisdictions. So the economic substance is only basically an issue when you do cross-border matters, because as long as you stay within the same jurisdiction, economic substance is not really an issue. But again, if you do cross-border with other jurisdiction, then of course you need to show, if you take profits out of another jurisdiction, that you have appropriate substance, employees, expenses, offices, whatsoever here, in order to basically say, yes, I'm actually doing business here in the other jurisdiction. And again, to come back to Urs, company migration, that's the big topic now. All these BVI fund managers or Cayman fund manager who now need to show economic substance it's kind of hard on those islands to put more business and office places in place, or actually maybe even convince people to actually move there for employees. So we have seen also in our experience a lot of companies from BVI or Cayman moving their company here to the UAE, because here you can have office space, you can have a high life for the employees actually being here. And then again, you have free zones. Currently, it's not possible for mainland, so you cannot move or migrate the company to the UAE mainland. But a variety of free zones, such as IFZA, now they allow the relocation from foreign jurisdiction here into the UAE. So economic substance, just to close again quick, this is only related to 9 specific business activity: fund manager, shipping, holding, just to name a few, where the international standard now says you need to show substance. And again, the UAE, following international best practice, now implemented those rules as well. So just this is a quick bracket remark.
And if I may add that, this is a huge, really a huge advantage for the UAE, because here you can accommodate so many companies. And therefore, I would suggest perhaps you make a small trip to the Caribbean, say hello. And this is also for your partners here, for your partners, a possibility. And also to remember that many of these companies in the Caribbean, their management perhaps makes a lot of money, $200,000, $500,000 a year. Now, if you tell them, hey, you have to go to Dubai, perhaps they say, well, perhaps not. But then afterwards you tell me, yeah, but you can have those $500,000 income here and you don't pay any income tax. That's a huge advantage, you know. So many of them who are currently in London, in Geneva, they say, hey, why the heck don't we move here? And perhaps if I may add something as well, especially in what we have seen in summertime in Europe, it was quite hot. No, I mean, it was quite hot. I mean, I made phone calls to people in Zurich or Geneva. They said, well, we have 35 degrees outside and 38 degrees inside, because there is no air conditioning, as you know, in Europe. And here in Dubai, you have all these advantages. You have perhaps 40 or 50 degrees outside, but inside 23. So it's definitely a welcoming area and where you can work and live beautifully.
Absolutely. And you mentioned about the very high quality of life that we have here. Another reason why many of us are here. And thank you so much for both of you for elaborating greatly on that question. I have another question here, which, well, there's 2 separate questions, but they're very much similar and connected. So are there any special accounting standards or requirements to file taxes? Well, somebody else asked, how do we have to prepare for this audit report for these taxes? Would you be able to give us a bit more information on that, Michael?
I always say it's quite easy. If you come from Europe or from Switzerland, just use the same background and the same understanding when you do business here, then you cannot go wrong.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question, which would possibly be for Berna. Does IFZA give training sessions?
Yes, we do. We have our in-house academy. So each one of our partners will get a first induction training, which lasts around 2.5 to 3 hours, where we actually tell them about company setup in general, about mainland, about free zone, and IFZA. We can also have the academy that presents seminars and webinars throughout the year.
Super, fantastic. I have a question related to the video recording. For those of you that maybe joined a little bit later, we can send this out to any registrants who did sign up, regardless of what time you entered. So if you missed a little bit of our exciting presentations, do not fear. Okay. Let me see if there's any further questions here. Okay. One question here. How do we expect that the implementation of corporate tax rules will treat the end of year bonuses when they're relevant, and will they minimize the tax impact?
Well, I would say you should ask your auditor and tax advisor to come up with the appropriate solution there.
And if I may add there something, up to now you had to do accounting for the renewal of companies very often. That was a requirement. So you took the cheapest accountant you can find and he did something, usually the authorities didn't come back and say, hey, but here and there is perhaps not so correct. These days now you need to do an accounting which should be quite up to date. And in the past, for example, me, when I had my law firm, I had paid myself a very, very small salary. Because whether I take it out as a profit or whether I take it out as a dividend didn't really make a difference. But now I guess it is an advantage to say, okay, I can pay, at least for me to the boss, a higher salary. That means you increase the expenses. Perhaps you will pay higher bonuses to the people. And perhaps you as a staff member, you can try and convince your boss and say, you know, you will reduce your tax if you pay me a higher bonus.
But again, there, if in the last 10 years you have 50 in salary, and then for the corporate tax implementation you pay 150, you might wake up a sleeping dog. So I'm not so sure if that's the way forward.
So perhaps you discuss it with those who are perhaps more specialists in all these fields. Yeah.
Absolutely. It looks like we've covered lots of questions today and we're running out of time for questions, I'm afraid. But rest assured, if you have asked a question, we will be answering it later on, and we do have all of your details here. I'm going to have to wrap up this really exciting session that we've had today. In order to do so, I'd really like to thank all of our speakers here, including Berna, Urs, and Michael. It's been a real pleasure to have you here for our webinar in IFZA today, and we really do look forward to welcoming you to the following webinar sessions that we will have. So please look out for those and have a lovely rest of your day, and we will see you soon.